for all the talk about the class of 2026 in Kansas, maybe being a little bit down or maybe overhyped in certain areas, here are two teams from Wichita and then Sharp, which is kind of a collage of, I would say, like central to western Kansas kid making, the semifinals and one of the biggest 7-on-7 tournaments Kansas City has ever hosted.
Hello and welcome to the Verbal Commitment Podcast here on the Kansas City Sports Network, brought to you by Home Field Apparel. I'm Kevin Flaherty, and I'm here as always with Ryan Wallace, and we're talking about the world of local recruiting from Kansas and Kansas City prospects to the college classes at Kansas, Kansas State, and Missouri. Over the weekend, we went to Turf Wars, a giant local 7-on-7 tournament that featured a lot of top talent from across the region, and we'll have interviews from a few of the best players in state, as well as some breakdowns of people both on the Kansas City, Missouri side of the metro area and those on the Kansas side. As always, if you like what you're hearing, comment below, tell your friends about us, subscribe, hit that like button, or leave us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts like Apple or Spotify. All of those things help us with the algorithm and help to grow the show and put us in front of more people like you. Ryan, a lot of times we'll open our show by talking about recruiting for the 3 local Power 4 schools. But while Kansas is off to kind of a fast start with 13 commitments, Kansas State and Missouri have just 1 apiece. I feel like that's going to change here pretty quickly as schools start hosting visits coming off of that last dead period. Kansas had another big junior day on Saturday. Missouri had some top targets on campus this past weekend as well. Kansas State is scheduling players to come out for spring ball. So I don't think it'll be too cool for too long.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, when we were talking to kids, even on Sunday, out at the Turf Wars event, talking to kids about, I've got this visit coming up. And, I know with K-State, they're starting their spring practice a little bit later. I think it'll be early April, kind of basically the month of April. So it's a little bit later start. But again, that's probably why, K-State fans are used to seeing a little bit more activity by now. Well, usually you've had maybe 1-2 weeks of spring practice visits, right? That have been so crucial for K-State. I think KU and Missouri do the same thing. So once I think the team is starting to practice, you can get guys back on campus. This dead period's now over. Things will kick in. But yeah, it has been ultra quiet in Columbia and Manhattan for sure.
But let's shift back to local high schools, and that means it's time for our weekly prospect profiles, where we take a look at Kansas and KC players who are a bit more under the radar, but who we think are worthy of a longer look. We've been flipping responsibilities week to week, kind of jumping from one of us doing Kansas and the other doing KC and back and forth. So why don't you take KC again this week? You had Kansas last week, and I understand that you might have just picked somebody that we saw in person this past weekend.
Well, actually, he was not in person this last week. I understand why you're confused, because Platte County has like 3 guys that are all like 6'5", 215, 225, 230. Brooks Hall was the tight end that we were able to see in person this past weekend or on Sunday at Turf Wars. I'm actually going with another route, and this will be a trend in this show. So if you're a Platte County Pirates fan, this is your type of episode. I'm sticking at Platte County. Cale Bunce is who I'm taking. 6'5", 215, 220-pound defensive end out there for Platte County on a state championship team. I love this kid, Kevin. The more that I've heard about him, the more I've watched him. He was the talk with some of the players that we talked to at Turf Wars from Platte County. We're like, who's kind of an up-and-comer for the Pirates that we need to know about? And over again, it was Cale Bunce, Cale Bunce, Cale Bunce. Nobody really knows what the holdup is, but it's one of those where, like, once coaches start to flip the tape on, start to come and see him, it's going to be immediate. Because, again, he's got the 6'5", length and size, but you see the get off and the acceleration. 6.5 sacks last season, all district player. He's also a 4.0 student, so he's got all those things going for him. I think the athleticism is there from a baseline standpoint, and yet he's got all the tools to take, his game and his athletic ability up a notch. He's training with our friends over there at Top Speed. And so again, friends of the show, they know what they're doing over there. We love Coach Potts, Coach Cash. I think the more that Cale Bunce kind of continues to, ingrain himself into football, into weight training, obviously, playing with a little bit lower pad level, playing with a little bit better, kind of leverage and building, the strength from the lower half and then generating that into, the length and the arms that he already has. This is a kid that in time, Kevin, strikes me as the type of kid that's going to be 6'5", 250 with ease, right? And still be able to have the mobility that he shows on tape and take the fundamentals and all the techniques up a notch. I feel like Platte County has a lot of things coming back, but on the defensive side, there's still some guys that they're going to have to replace. Cale Bunce is the type of guy that can be the steady Eddie on that defensive side of the ball, be the leader and the captain on that side. And I think use, a Jack Oots and a Rocco Marriott and all these other guys, use those guys to kind of get himself noticed on their tape, right? Like it happens all the time. Coaches flip on Platte County tape and you're there to watch somebody else. And man, who's this 6'5" defensive end that's going off over here? I feel like Cale Bunce is one of those types, and maybe somebody takes a late flyer. Maybe he slips through the cracks. Right now, only a St. Thomas offer is on the table. So just one offer from the FCS level. And that's St. Thomas that was like, D3 2 years ago or whatever. It's not a North Dakota State offer, I guess is the point I'm trying to make. I think there's a lot of potential going with him. It strikes me again as a guy that people are going to want to come in on maybe a spring unofficial, maybe come back for a camp. But again, the junior tape's pretty good. And I think if maybe you put a precursor on him of like, by fall, we'd like to see you at this weight. And if your first 4 games look this way, you're going to be the type of guy that we're going after. I think Cale Bunce is on the rise.
To your point, at 7-on-7, Platte County had Jack Oots on one side of the line, had Brooks Hall on the other side. And if you didn't know any better, the only way you'd be able to tell was the different colored shoes that they wore from a body type standpoint. 2 guys that look very much alike physically. Something in the water in Platte County right now. And we'll probably get into that a little bit more later. I'm on the Kansas side this week, and I'm going to pick another person we didn't see this weekend, but somebody that you can watch hoop this week at state basketball, and that's Pratt tight end Arlie Morrell. Kansas is becoming a great state at producing tight ends. Lincoln Cure, Desan Brame in the last class, Ian Premer in this class. But you can also find a lot of guys who are maybe slept on a little bit more. We both like Tyler Little a few classes ago. Guys like Scott Moore of Girard went to Delaware out of this past class. Morrell trends more on the receiving side of things right now. He's 6'6", about 210, 215 pounds. He's a really good athlete, and I like the way that Pratt uses him, Ryan. I like the way that they find different ways to get the ball into his hands. Here you see him lined up as a wide receiver. He's somebody that can run like a wideout on the outside. He's also somebody that has no problems going up over the top of you and making plays vertically. The catch radius is terrific. You can see some of the speed there. Ryan, this is a guy that I feel like has a chance to maybe go to some summer camps and really pop. He's somebody, we love tight ends who are versatile like he is right there. You see, we love tight ends that are good basketball players. He has that too. Last week, he had a double-double at Sub-State to help Pratt beat Rose Hill. And with Pratt beating Hugoton, Greenbacks are headed to state basketball where they'll take on Andale. You see every once in a while guys get recruited based off of basketball tape, right? Where people like the football tape, but then they see the basketball tape and they say, okay, this is the kind of athlete and the kind of frame that we like. It would not surprise me at all to see Morrell's interest really start picking up as more people do research into him.
Well, and, let's also address the elephant in the room that could, lend a hand maybe to Morrell here is, a lot of the things that you were saying there kind of correlate on another level. I do not quote me as trying to make apples to apples here, but on another level as like an Ian Premer.
Sure.
And if a KU or a K-State both were to miss out on an Ian Premer, this is not a bad fallback option to have. Again, you're going to need more development here. Specifically, I think when you watch Arlie in the, the physicality side of things.
Yeah.
Again, as you said, more kind of that basketball playing athlete off the edge, right? Than somebody that's in line being physical. I mean, he is physical. I think I just saw he picked up his 500th career rebound. So you know he can get physical, but in doing so in the football sense. But yeah, the athletic ability here. I mean, multi-sport athlete. I think he's podiumed as part of Pratt's track and field team each of the last 2 years. So all those things, as you mentioned, Kevin, very traitsy. It's going to be, a matter of folks seeing him more in person over this offseason. And then again, kind of doing that projection. How much do we feel like we can get out of him? And Kevin, I feel like you might have struck gold with this one, because I think there's going to be a lot of staffs, whether it's K-State or KU, or whether it's, Group of Five or other FBS, that I think are going to look at him and go, this is absolutely worth the investment.
Coming up, we'll break down what we saw at the Turf Wars 7-on-7 tournament here in Kansas City, complete with interviews from a few top local players. But first, let's chat about our friends over at Home Field Apparel. If you're a Kansas or a Kansas State fan, you should head over right now, because both schools have new items to check out as spring hits and as we get into baseball season. Kansas, Kansas State, and Missouri fans all have more than 40 items to choose from. So head on over to homefieldapparel.com and use the promo code link below in the description, and you can get 15% off your first order. We'll be right back.
Looking for tickets for your next event? Tickets for Less is your #1 source. Save big on every purchase when you use promo code KCSN at ticketsforless.com.
Success in real estate takes more than vision. It takes the right financial partner. When someone takes something rundown and turns it into something great, that's called a comeback story. Like Bryan Group. They take distressed properties here in KC, completely rework them, and then turn them into valuable real estate. But that kind of work needs the right bank behind it. Enter Emprise Bank. They're not about cookie-cutter loans. They saw Bryan Group's vision, backed them, and now they're making big moves in Kansas City real estate. Talk about your partner impossible. Emprise doesn't do one-size-fits-all financing. They invest in potential and back growth. Visit emprisebank.com/KC to learn more. Emprise Bank, member FDIC, equal housing lender.
Welcome back to the Verbal Commitment Podcast, sponsored by Home Field Apparel. Over the weekend, we took in some 7-on-7 just north of Oak Park Mall in Overland Park. And Ryan, while a lot of the players we wanted to get to watch weren't available for one reason or another, it did give us a chance to put eyes on 4 of our top 7 players on the Missouri side of Kansas City. Platte County teammates Rocco Marriott, Jack Oots, Blue Springs South's Aiden Wilhelm, and Liberty North's Treshundon Neal. Let's start with Marriott. He's a guy that I think both of us were high on heading into the event. But I also think if you had asked us afterwards who grew the most in your eyes after watching them in person, I think he was one of the guys that actually maybe made the biggest leap, in our opinions, after watching him operate.
I was going to say, a lot of times when you go to these 7-on-7 events, and we even talked to a couple of the coaches there, and in all honesty and transparency, yes, as coaches of those particular programs and those kids, you want to win. You want to be the champion and put it on social media and everything. But a lot of times, like, you'll come out of it as you and I did, and there might be a team that doesn't even make like the quarterfinals. And you're like, yeah, but when they were clicking, like, they looked as good as any team that we saw. Right. And I thought that Rocco's Epic 7 team, and the Epic 7 had, I think, 2 different rosters out there, but particularly 2 or 3, actually, now that I think about it, particularly the one that was, spearheaded by Rocco. It was primarily a ton of his Platte County teammates. So yeah, it makes sense that there were some connections there and the timing felt right. But like, there was just something unique, I think, about the way that he commanded things. Yeah. And so many times we've been to 7-on-7 events, and I can remember watching a Zane Flores or a Daniel Kalen They're both from Nebraska, but both have gone on to Power 4 programs since then. And again, there was a command that they had and a level of just calm and patience that it exuded not only on that field, but then carried into the fall and carried into their recruitment. And with Rocco, everything's there, Kevin. Like, I want to bounce back and forth the conversation with you because I guess what stood out most to you in terms of technically speaking, and then we can kind of continue to bounce this back and forth because as folks are going to listen to us here, the overall crux of everything is why the hell this kid is not being recruited at a much, much, much higher level. But again, let's get into the fundamentals of what we saw from him as a quarterback, because as you alluded to, I just thought he was so crisp with everything that he did.
Yeah, the poise was great. The leadership was terrific. We brought up before we came on the show, there was a moment where they were going to get the ball back with under 20 seconds left and needing to get a touchdown to get the win. And he was just real calm, talking to the receiver, saying, hey, carry your route another 5 or 10 yards so that we can get the sideline route open underneath you. Things that you don't necessarily see from quarterbacks in these situations, right? It's not unusual to see quarterbacks go out and just throw the ball well. And you're like, hey, he's dealing. He had that, but I think I was more impressed by a lot of the other things. Also, Ryan, I think when you watch Rocco on tape, he throws from several different arm angles, depending on the situation. And if you watch Platte County, they spread things out. You know, there are some times where he's getting the ball out quickly. And so it doesn't necessarily always come out, you know, perfectly over the top, whatever else. It's more, hey, get the ball out of your hands quick. In this situation where he had a chance to just sort of drop back, wasn't throwing around a defensive lineman, the mechanics, I thought, were crisp. I thought they were really good. I thought they were exactly what you would look for. He was really accurate. He threw the ball both, you know, got RPMs, the velocity, but also fitted into spaces. He read the defense. He moved safeties with his eyes.
Yes.
Which I think was something that you don't necessarily always see from quarterbacks at that level. And so to me, he checked every box. And one of the things that I said to you when we were there was I said, okay, let's forget his recruiting situation. If you went to a camp and you saw that guy playing like that, and somebody walked up to you and said, oh, yeah, that's Bob Smith. He's a 4-star kid who's got 10 Power 5 offers, you wouldn't have batted an eye. You would have said, okay, like that's what they look like. And I think that's part of why it's so hard to understand why Rocco's recruitment isn't more accelerated than it is, because he is what they look like. He is what we've seen from top kids in Kansas City, whether it's Drew Lock or guys like that. He is that type of player. I'm not saying, hey, he's exactly like Drew Lock. I'm just saying he wouldn't have looked out of place with a Drew Lock or a guy like that at that same stage of their careers.
Well, and I mean, to your point, again, to strengthen this argument, like he wasn't with Epic 7 on Saturday because he chose to compete in a combine in St. Louis, one that he goes out at 6'4", like over 200 pounds, runs a laser 4.7, which hand times like 4.5, and was like Mr. Everything from the
10-foot broad, had like 3.9 shot. I mean, he's a terrific athlete. Tests well, like
we've talked about it. Like he took leaps and bounds in what he became as a passer as a junior. But in terms of what he's always been able to do, rolling around outside the pocket and kind of the deceiving athleticism with his feet, that's always been there. And so it is crazy to me. Like it is, because as you mentioned, I think if you'd pointed to him and said he's from California or whatever, or if he's in California or Texas or Florida, I think he's getting offers. And again, before the K-State and KU fans kind of rush to, again, kind of like clip this as a highlight and send it to the K-State and KU staffs and Missouri staffs, like these guys are saying you're missing. We're not always pointing the finger at the Power 4 teams. And I think Rocco understands that, as you'll hear from the interview later on in the show. But the thing that pisses me and Kevin off, and it sounds like from what we saw on social media, some of the engagements we were getting back on stuff we were throwing out there about Rocco, a lot of coaches that have gone against him in Kansas City is Colorado State, Tulsa, AAC, MAC. Like, there are a couple schools that are kind of from those areas and regions and conferences that are interested in him. But where, like, I don't understand why there isn't an offer. And I think if there's an excuse of like motion and any sort of like, well, there's a hitch in his delivery or whatever, or we just need to see him, we'd like to see him smooth this out, or we want to make sure that his sophomore tape is not actually who he is. We want to make sure that junior Rocco is who senior Rocco is going to be like. If that to me are the excuses that we're going to hear about, behind closed doors about why those types of level teams are not recruiting Rocco Marriott, we don't curse on this show very often, but I'm just going to say it's bullshit. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense to me. I'm getting fired up. He's a great kid. He has everything you want. And again, you and I have covered this area for a long time.
Yeah,
I think about guys, and again, this isn't throwing guys under the bus. I'm just saying, and maybe it's because recruiting has changed, and maybe it is just because of the portal. But you get a guy like Tyler Matthews at McPherson that probably wasn't as polished as Rocco, that was getting Power 5 level attention. I think about like Max Shortell and Montel Cozart at Miege. I think about Conrad Hawley at Ray-Pec, and back in the Charlie Weiss days with Jordan Darling that transferred up from Texas that had, I think, his junior senior year at Gardner Edgerton. All those guys were you understood like why they got recruited, and yet at the same time Rocco is further along mechanically and every shape of the matter for me than a lot of those kids were. And so, yeah, again, Kevin, I don't have the answer. There's suspicion that it's portal related, right? That this is just how things are going to be moving forward for these kids, but it's unfortunate. I think Rocco deserves a little bit more in terms of the FBS level attention. And, maybe in due time, Kevin, that it'll all work out and he'll end up where he needs to be. But it's just a shame that can't happen, at least right now, right out of the books from a high school standpoint.
I feel like we could do a whole show on this, and honestly, before the high school season starts, we may have done a show's worth of Rocco Marriott conversation. But for right now, let's move on real quick to his teammate. Jack Oots committed to Kansas. I thought he also acquitted himself well, Ryan. He was a guy that I know I really liked the blocking tape for Jack, and I was interested to see him in the 7-on-7 setting where he's asked, hey, the other guy doesn't know that knows that you're not going to block him. Can you get open? Can you run routes? Can you do things related to the passing game? And I thought he played pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy that, I've come on the show and said, like, maybe he's an offensive tackle or anything, but I think the more that we see him, he's flashing more smoothness in the route running. The athleticism is improving. Again, a great kid. He's reliable. I mean, as a pass catcher. And again, I think with the blocking tape, like, he is the complete package that I think KU coaches look for and exactly what they needed. And I think they're going to be really happy. He's very happy to be a Jayhawk too, which you'll hear a little bit later.
We'll have interviews with both of those players coming up later in the show. Ryan, with Aiden Wilhelm, he's such a dynamic athlete that he made our top 10 in KC Mo. And I like that he's doing 7-on-7 to work on the nuances of becoming a passer and getting better at that aspect of it. Because let's be real about it. He is at his most dangerous when he's a threat to run the football.
Absolutely. And so I thought that what we saw from him on Sunday was encouraging. I thought he made some, throws that you don't see as much on tape from him. And he's come a long way, I think, as a quarterback. And yeah, he's still got some ways to go, and maybe he doesn't end up there in college. I think you and I are kind of on the same page that he's probably going to have to transition to another position, depending on where he ends up playing, depending on the fit. But I thought he proved himself that he is capable of playing quarterback at the next level. Again, it's just going to be a matter of, what college that is. But I will say this, the more we watch him, Kevin, if you're going to keep him at the quarterback position, you've got to let him just play a little bit more off script, play maybe a little bit more loose than you're used to having your quarterback play, because I think that is where you get maximum Aiden Wilhelm. That's where you get the top 10 player that we ranked on this show. And I think hopefully you'll be able to pair him with a guy like Gary Hill, who, I don't know if we were planning on talking about Gary, but I think we need to mention he was a guy that was right outside of our top 10 for a long time. Yeah. We've talked about him on the show going back into the fall. We're fans of Gary Hill, but it was like, we'd like to see a little bit more of him. Well, we saw a little bit more of him on Sunday. We saw him do a little bit of everything. The body is there. Like, he's going to be a terrific kind of modern day slot guy that, kind of like Bryson Hayes in terms of how he's built, like can do just a lot of great things with the football, either as a pass catcher or maybe you can get him on a reverse or things like that. I was really, really impressed with Gary Hill, and he is already, I think, knocking on the door for that top 10 recognition on our show.
Absolutely. And to your point about Wilhelm, even in a situation where you knew he could not run the ball, I thought his best plays were when they got him out and booted him and let him throw on the run. So you got to see the athleticism at play there. Treshundon Neal is kind of funny because he did make a couple plays when we watched him at corner, but probably the most impressive thing was how little we noticed him. Quarterbacks were so worried about staying away from his side of the field.
Yeah, I mean, we watched him in the semifinals against Warren Academy that ended up going on and winning, and Warren Academy showed up and looked like, they were a Big Ten team, like ready to go out there and play right away. But yeah, I mean, Braden Warren, I think, is the quarterback's name, who's already got, I believe, a KU and a K-State offer, 2027 quarterback. And they did not go to Treshundon Neal's side. I mean, it was very obvious. It was like, we're not going to throw at that kid. And yet we came away impressed with Treshundon Neal from what he did on offense. That, again, is a reason why we believe that will carry over to make him the top 10 level prospect that we have him ranked right now on our show as a cornerback. He made a toe-touching, over-the-top kind of, on a guy's head, as they say, touchdown reception. I can't remember if they decided to hold it or not, whether he got his feet in or not. But, I mean, he got possession. I mean, whether his toes touched or not wasn't what made it a spectacular catch. It was the fact that it was the fact that he climbed the ladder, showed all the ball tracking skills, the ball skills, strong hands. Yes, he needs weight, but he is the modern day, like, what everybody wants at the cornerback position in terms of just unbelievable length and pretty good fluidity at that length. And I think, the more hopefully that we can see from him, maybe in a camp setting where guys don't have an option, they have to throw at him, I think is where, he's going to make more and more people pay attention to him. I think the slender build right now might be holding him back a little bit, but man, he's got everything that coaches want. I think he's going to continue to blossom at Liberty North.
On the Kansas side, it's no secret. Leavenworth's Diver McCray is one of my favorite players in the state. We've talked about him on the show, and I didn't think he disappointed viewing him in person.
No, and I mean, we got to see him play a position that it sounds like most colleges aren't going to play him at, and that's wide receiver. But we got to see him, again, kind of from the same thing we were saying about Treshundon, is you got to see him excel in a different position, but also show a lot of the things that are going to carry over perhaps to the safety position as a defensive back in terms of, the way that he times the ball in terms when it comes to like contested catches. I thought he timed everything great. I thought we got to see him get out of the blocks and show that acceleration. I can't imagine him coming downhill to make a tackle. It would be frightening. Good frame on the kid. And again, a guy that I know K-State is keeping a really, really watchful eye on. And it sounds like he'll be up there for an unofficial kind of practice visit here in a matter of weeks.
After that, some of the players who stood out on the Kansas side were real sleepers. And a guy that you pointed out early on, and I think we liked more and more as we watched him, was Ellsworth's Cooper McGowan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Cooper, was a kid that I talked about leading up to this event in our show last week. We showed some highlights of him, on defense and on offense, played exclusively at linebacker. And, you and I were talking about Cooper in terms of like, there's a sense maybe that it feels sometimes like he hasn't even grown into his body, right? Just in kind of the way that he is out there. And you're kind of like, man, maybe there is some rigidness and some stiffness there in terms of his agility. And yet at the same time, then he's going out and he's picking off passes and making jumps on plays that, you almost didn't expect him to do. And so there's a lot for me, and when, again, they play different positions, but there's some Samuel Samay to his game in terms of like, you're looking at like a Bambi, right? Like you're looking at a kid that doesn't even like have any idea what he could be and what he's going to be. But the tools are all there. Like the traits are all there. I came away really impressed with him. Yes, he needs weight. He knows that. Yes, he might need to shore up some things in terms of on the defensive side of the ball, his fundamental like tackling and physicality, but he proved himself a cover guy. And if you're going to play him at defensive end, or if you're going to play him at outside linebacker, a lot of times that is the bigger question is like, yeah, we can teach you how to tackle, but like if you can't drop and cover, you're no use to us. You're going to teach Cooper McCown how to tackle, and he already knows how to drop and cover. Wildly impressive, I thought, from him from the pass protection standpoint and coverage.
Another under the radar guy, another Cooper, and the reason he's under the radar is one of his teammates is one of the top players in the state, Ian Premer. Cooper Onmont. I really liked him a lot, Ryan. I thought from both the body standpoint and then when he accelerated, like when he was running a crossing route, it wasn't necessarily the cut where he'd lose somebody, but once he accelerated right after making the cut, he pulled away from people.
I was going to say the acceleration for me caught my attention. And again, he's a guy that, you and I had lightly penciled in for 2027 as a guy to watch. But when you put his film on, the obvious question that comes up is like, is he getting open and is he doing things because he's legit or because there's so much attention to Ian Premer? And I thought Cooper Onmont proved it's him. It's not just Ian Premer. You could put this kid on any other team and he'd be, target number one and have every defense's attention. I thought his build was really good. I mean, a solid base to already work with, but the acceleration really caught my attention. I think as he continues to grow as just kind of the sure-handed, reliable catcher and continues to progress as a route runner, there's a lot of things to like about this in-state player for both KU and K-State and potentially plenty of other FBS colleges. As we get more into that 2027 cycle, there are going to be a lot of eyes on his junior tape. Again, he can piggyback off Ian Premer and really use that to his advantage, I think.
Speaking of 2027s, a guy we didn't get to see much of, but was in attendance, Arius Finley from Derby. We've talked about him on the show. I'm so fascinated to see how his recruitment pans out because he's already, one of the best running backs in the state of Kansas, was as a sophomore. It sounds like some schools are starting to show him interest. He talked about Oklahoma. He talked about Kansas State. A few different schools there are kind of starting to tap in a little bit. And I'll be fascinated to see not necessarily where his game goes from here, but what schools notice him, what schools are kind of trying to find a spot for him.
Well, and along the same lines, but not directly related to Arius, I think it's an interesting, storyline of, Wichita Wheat ends up making, I think, the quarterfinals or semifinals against in the bracket play without Arius Finley available. He played one game on Sunday, kind of twisted the ankle and was like, I need to shut it down. Let's be safe here. He was itching to get back. Like, I think if they made the championship game, he might have tried to get out there and give it a go. Although I know Coach Clark would not have appreciated that. But yeah, I mean, like for them to get there and do the things that they did, for Sharp and the top performance squad to get there without a guy like Robert Hunter that wasn't in attendance because he was at a camp. Like, what would that team have done? Maybe they beat Warren Academy with Robert Hunter. Who knows? I thought that was a huge takeaway is, again, for all the talk about the class of 2026 in Kansas, maybe being a little bit down or maybe overhyped in certain areas, here are two teams from Wichita and then Sharp, which is kind of a collage of, I would say, like what central to western Kansas kid making, the semifinals and one of the biggest 7-on-7 tournaments Kansas City has ever hosted. And I thought 785, Epic, Empire, all those teams that feature local kids had really impressive showings. So I thought, let's give that, I think, some proper publicity as well. One last guy I want to touch on because my mind just went there because of Arius and Derby. How about William Owens? Caught our attention from Wichita Wheat, a transfer from Wichita East. He will play this year at Derby. was there as a tight end. But when you see him, like that's a D lineman frame. But again, you saw him kind of out of his natural position, but show wild athleticism. I can't wait to see what he does for the Derby defensive line.
Yeah, absolutely. It was also really cool to see a few 2025s out there competing, including Derby cornerback Martell Jackson, who's headed to K-State, Free State linebacker Parker Moore, who signed with Wyoming, and his high school teammate Landon Leipold, who's part of a terrific local class going to Nebraska Kearney. Martell got a little banged up, but those players were big reasons, Ryan, why Sharp made it to the championship game before ultimately falling to that loaded Warren Academy team in a tight game that they had every chance to win.
Yeah, well, and let's also talk. Let's also just say, hey, kudos to Sharp, because as their coach was telling us, like, not a lot of 7-on-7 experience, and I think this was like their third or fourth tournament, and they're already in the finals. So wildly impressive.
Absolutely. We will have interviews with Platte County's Rocco Marriott and Jack Oots coming up after the break. We'll be right back.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network. Make sure you download our new app. Find it on the App Store or Google Play. Just search KC Sports Network.
Welcome back to the Verbal Commitment Podcast, sponsored by Home Field Apparel. Ryan and I hit up the Turf Wars 7-on-7 tournament this weekend and had a chance to talk with underrated quarterback Rocco Marriott. Here's what Marriott had to say about his development, Platte County's attempt to run it back and win state again this year, and his recruitment.
Here with Rocco Marriott from Platte County High School. Rocco, let's first just get into recruiting. That's what everybody kind of wants to know. Are you pleased with where things are at, and do you feel like maybe as the offseason is progressing, things are starting to pick up for you a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously thankful for the offers I've received. The coaches that have been showing me love, and especially Cornell. Coach Dittman's been texting me crazy. But, yeah, I mean, obviously I'm going to be going to, like, bigger, like, FBS schools this next month-ish, the schools I've been talking to. And, you know, I'm hoping something will come out of that. I've been talking to them for a while.
Who are some of the local schools that you feel like have made it a point to stay in touch with you, even if the offers haven't come yet, but you can tell there's some genuine interest there?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Arkansas State I've been starting to talk to a lot, and then NIU recently. I'm going to go up there pretty soon. So those are probably the main two.
When it comes to some of the like Power 4 schools, Missouri, Kansas State, the schools that we're covering on the show, who do you feel like you've got a pretty good connection with there, and how are those relationships developed?
Yeah, I mean, I would say Coach Wells at K-State. I've been talking to him for a while, and Sean McGuire there as well. He's the assistant quarterback coach, so I've been talking to them since probably my freshman year, and so yeah, it's great to build a relationship with them.
What is kind of what are they telling you in terms of maybe why they haven't offered or what they're still waiting on in terms of the KUs, K-States, and Missouri?
Yeah, so they're going after more national guys is what they've been telling me now. So they've gone out of state to recruit, 4 stars, whatever, which I don't have the stars as of now. Personally, I feel like I'm underrated, obviously. But, yeah, I mean, I've stayed in contact with them, and, never know.
I was going to say, in a way, does that kind of fuel the fire? You kind of want to prove them wrong a little bit?
All the time.
Does it hurt them in recruiting at all? When they do kind of. Do you like the honesty, or at the same time it's kind of burns you a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I love the honesty. There's been schools that I've talked to that act like they love me, all this, but then won't show genuine interest, and I would say K-State is someone who's shown genuine interest.
When you look at the numbers, next year, whether it's height, weight, 40 time, whatever, maybe the biggest number is 0, the number of times you guys lost this past year on your way to the state title. What was that experience like for you?
Yeah, it was great. I mean, we knew it ever since summer that we were going to be a special team, obviously, because me and the receivers have played together forever, and then obviously all the seniors on defense that they play well together, obviously, and then we started to build a great relationship since we played sophomore year, all of us did. So being in the same locker room as them, it was great, and then we knew it was going to be a special year.
How special was it to do that with so many guys being juniors and knowing that you guys have a chance to run it back this year?
Yeah, it was great, especially playing, PCYFL with our youth football league. We've been playing with them for forever, so that was great.
How do you feel like you've improved from last year? Like, what's been your main area of focus that you've tried to really hone in on?
Yeah, I would say ball security and accuracy, especially for my sophomore year. That was probably my main thing that I need to work on. And then get with Coach Hoover, I mean, he's done miracles with me. I mean, I feel so much confident, more confident, and I feel like I'm just such a better passer.
Feels like mechanically things have changed a little bit. What's been maybe a major focus for you there?
Yeah, just trying to get more smooth, just make sure everything flows, so it's in a game, it's just second nature.
How about the reading defense aspect of it? I heard you say when you were playing 7-on-7, you were saying, hey, I was watching the safety for this, and he did this, and then I threw the ball there. Yeah. How much of your focus right now is also on that aspect of it and learning to get better reading defenses?
Yeah, so last offseason, me, all the receivers, running backs, we all got together at 5 a.m. before school, just watch film once or twice a week, and I mean, we're going to start that up soon enough, and I feel like that's just been a huge thing.
I'm sure we'll ask Jack about you, but wanted to ask you really quick, what's it like throwing to Jack, and for maybe people who haven't seen him play, how would you describe it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously a big target. You can put it up high where the little kids can't get it, you know, that's his thing, I think. But it's great to have someone who's just reliable.
We also chatted with Kansas tight end commitment Jack Oots, Marriott's teammate at Platte County. Oots talks about the Jayhawks and more.
Here with Jack Oots, Epic 7, starting the day out here at Turf Wars. Jack, let's get into the KU commitment, because we haven't talked to you since then. What was it? It seemed like it caught everybody else off guard, but then when you talked about KU, you were like, no, this has been something that's been developing with you personally for a long time, just in that relationship that you had.
No doubt. I think KU is one of those schools that's like, it's been overlooked for a while, and just recently it's been able to start kind of building its program up. And you know, they have a great basketball program, so it's overlooked by that, but it's slowly growing and getting more traction. So I wanted to be a part of something special, and I think KU's going to be that for me.
How awesome has it been to see this 2026 class come together for KU? It's a really, really talented group.
It's amazing. I mean, I joined the group with, like, I think I was the 11th commitment or something like that, and now we're up to 13, and that's the most in the nation right now, top 4 in the recruiting class, and I mean, it's amazing to be a part of. So yeah.
Obviously, you know, the offensive coordinator changed there, but it seems like a very confident program in terms of the tight end is still going to be heavily utilized.
Yeah, one of the things they were pitching at me is that they're going to try to keep that same kind of flow of offense using 12 personnel, 11 personnel, and some 13 personnel. And with Coach Zabrowski, he's a great offensive football mind, and he's obviously done great things with quarterbacks. So I mean, he's going to do a good job.
Getting back to that 2026 commitment class, how tight is this group already?
It's already pretty tight, honestly. It's exciting because I'm already making new friends, and I mean, we've met once. I've only met some of them once, and but we're already planning on our official visit dates, and we're going to a practice here soon. It's great to meet them. We have a group chat going, and we're all communicating that way. So yeah.
So obviously, now that you're committed, you're not like some of these other guys like Rocco that's maybe out here trying to show something, prove something. What is kind of your goal of this offseason for you as a player?
I think it's continuing to get better, and I think that's every offseason is just continuing to try to get the best athlete as I can be. And then obviously fine-tuning some stuff I need to work on. There's obviously stuff you need to work on, so like footwork, explosiveness. I'm going to be doing speed training here coming up, and then, I mean, yeah, just continuing to get better.
Is there anybody, you know, fans now know your name, they know Rocco's name. Is there anybody else from that Platte County team, though, that we know how loaded it is, that you're like, some more college coaches should be getting in on this player?
No doubt. I mean, our entire offense is stacked. We're blessed to have those kind of athletes. We got Brooks Hall, he's a 6'5" athlete, Trace Baskerville, Braden Stevens, Ty Christopher. Then on the defensive side, we got like a kid named Kale Bunce, he's 6'5", huge hands. He's a great athlete. He's going to be doing some, he's going to blow up here soon, I think. I mean, if everything goes according to plan. But yeah, we got some really blessed athletes, and I mean, it's exciting to see where they can go.
Translation, Kevin, is that Platte County's not going anywhere anytime soon.
No doubt. No doubt.
So tight end wise, a lot of guys who are high school tight ends are really more like wide receivers. You seem to take a lot of pleasure in the blocking aspect of it.
Definitely. I take pride in blocking just because we obviously have a loaded wide receiving class, or wide receiver core, so I don't necessarily get as much targets, but I understand that it's because they're good too. So I take pride in blocking, and I'm trying to enjoy the blocking because that's kind of what separates me from other tight ends. It makes me different, and I think that's what's helped my game. So yeah.
How does that help you at KU? Because they use tight ends in all different roles, and it seems like you can pretty much do any of them.
It helps me at KU just because it makes me versatile. I mean, it's going to make me find the field faster, I hope. Just because I can be in that run game, but I can also be in the pass game and be a threat that way.
Who's been your primary recruiter at KU?
Coach Lubick.
Okay.
Yeah, Coach Lubick, Coach Zabrowski, and then Coach Leipold, obviously. We've all been in touch. But yeah.
What's that relationship like with Coach Lubick?
It's nice. He's a great guy. If you've met him, he's gone through a ton of stuff with like cancer and all that kind of stuff, and it's kind of made him who he is. His coaching style is very positive, and he tries to instill like hope into people instead of like kind of beating them down and trying to make them tougher. He builds them up. And that's kind of what I like in coaching style.
We asked Rocco to kind of break you down, and I'd like to do the opposite with you. What are people missing with Rocco? What makes Rocco a special player?
Honestly, I don't know what they're missing. He's a great athlete. He's 6'5" or 6'4", a strong, fast athlete, and he can put the ball anywhere on the field. So he really is a good player, and I mean, coaches are honestly missing out on him.
Thanks to all of you for watching and listening to the Verbal Commitment Podcast here on KCSN. If you like what you've seen or heard, comment below, leave us a like, subscribe, or hit us with a 5-star rating. And until next time, we'll see you on the trail, and take care.